Hey guys, it's your boy Phil Shocker, the Nice Jjdl here. We're going to do a little bit of a quick video here just because I want to put a little bit of a void here. First and foremost, unfortunately, we will not be having a Jjdl, a John Jr. Draft League Week 3 battle against Gojo, who was our opponent. Unfortunately, Gojo has had some really bad times with dealing with his college studies and unfortunately cannot be able to battle us this week and decided to want to give us the forfeit. I have respected Gojo, and I really hope that Gojo, if you watch this video, hopefully your mental state gets better, and I hope you do well with your studies and still be able to participate in the league because you're a great player and a really good person. So best of luck and wishes to you for the rest of the season and also outside of the season. But real quick, I decided, guys, that it's time to make a change to this team. I was looking back at the draft board because I was definitely thinking about making transactions over time. And I looked and there was a lot of options still on the board. And there's been some things that just haven't been bringing it all this week. And I just feel like I'm just not seeing myself bring them, or I just feel like I'm not confident enough in them in the matchup to bring just because of what I've faced. And I've been looking like for the first 4 weeks, there's been some Pokemon I'm not just gonna bring it all, and there's gonna be some Pokemon I don't bring it all in general. So I decided to make some transactions. So we're gonna make a little bit of a quick video here to go over what I dropped, explain why I dropped them, and pick up the things I did pick up, and explain why I think it makes it better for my team. So first off, we're gonna go in order of the Pokemon that I am the most sad to lose versus the Pokemon that I'm not the biggest. Oh man, they're gone. Oh god, type of thing right there. Real quick. So number one is Mamoswine. I wanted to use Mamoswine so bad this season, man. But just for these first 4 weeks, I looked into my week 4 matchup, which you already saw Luminion there. My opponent has a Luminion, so that person already knows who he is. But I'm not spoiling our week 4 matchup, so don't get involved with that. As you can also see, I'm trying to prep for that week 4 match, but I wanted to do a video. That way you guys have something in place of week 3. And I didn't feel like doing a community post on it just because I feel like it's more better to talk about this, especially with all the changes I made as well. And I'd rather do this now instead of doing inside of a video. So, of a team builder for next week or whenever I upload this season. So, we dropped Mamoswine, and I'm really sad to drop Mamoswine, but I think the one thing about Mamoswine was really good was, again, it really was really paired well in web support, and it did have access to a couple of things. But here's the problem. I need to be forced to bring webs on Vikable every single week, and there are some times I don't really want to bring webs on Vikable when I don't think webs are necessarily needed, slash are kind of, there to be there. So what I definitely think of what I want to do in this matchup, going in future matchups, is to have not pressure Vikable as much. But I do think was one of the better chances of having it. But I do think Mamoswine is still a phenomenal Pokemon. I definitely want to draft it in a future league and try it again there, but only if I feel like I have a more confident team that deals with the weaknesses Mamoswine does. I feel like the team did, but there's still some things that we just don't know how to check yet, and I just think it's time to drop Mamoswine. Another one that actually kind of hurts me because we actually were going to bring it against Gojo, and we brought it in our Week 2 game, which actually came in pretty clutch in our Week 2 game, providing a lot of great offensive pressure. It's Hisuian Zoroark. I do love Zoroark. I love this mon to death. It is fantastic. It is honestly my favorite Hisuian Pokemon. It is so unbelievably amazing. But I think what's going to lack is, again, the weak defenses on this mon. And again, just being a normal ghost type, having that weakness is great. But I felt like we had weaknesses that weren't getting covered with that dark typing. Like we had mons that, yeah, I could switch into it, but weren't like the greatest switch-ins to it. Especially if they were from the physical side. Like that was only going to be big man overquill. So didn't feel like we had any ways to counter that. And also, we're not going to rely on a Terra Fairy Sandslash to really do that. But so I am going to make the unfortunate drop to drop Hisuian Zoroark, but I felt like it was a really good Mon still, and I do want to try it one more time to see if there's some magic left in it. This one, I really think I should have taken the opportunity when I could to Terra Pokemon with this back in the day when Terra was allowed. Terra Dragonite, man, would have been so nice. But Dragonite as it is, personally for me, I don't like it. I think Dragonite was starting out strong, but because of how proven broken it is, it's just not as good. Do I think Dragonite is still a fantastic Pokemon? Yes, I do. Is there still viability and usage for Dragonite on teams? Yes. But do I think for me right now, this is a Pokemon I really want to have on my team? No. I really think this is a Pokemon that does not fit my playstyle. It's not going to fit what I want. And I overall think it's just something I didn't really want on this team. So it's unfortunate. Now we get into the two Pokemon that I'm not really that hurt about losing. That's Fezandipity. Like, don't get me wrong, Fezandipity was great. It's a fairy type. It was one of the best fairies that were left on the board. But honest to God, there was two fairies left that I would have honestly probably would preferred this over that. And one of them is not even going to be the best fairy in the world, and the other one was a Mimikyu, which Mimikyu is still a decent fairy. Hashtag Mimikyu good fairy. But Vessidipity, it's fine. I just don't think it's my type of style. I don't really like. I like certain bulky offense that I can take advantage with. This is just lame in my opinion. The fact that it's got better special coverage than physical coverage, I just don't like this thing. It's just not my cup of tea. And Sand Slash, I love you, Sand Slash, you do. But if you weren't on a Sand team, this is probably not for you, man. But if I had it on a Sand team and I could have had Sand Slash, then I would have probably been more offensively choice into bringing it in more matches, especially with Terra. But as it is, it's just bad. It's not that good. So, well, let's go ahead and talk about the things we did pick up in the transactions. Now, first and foremost, I'm going to point it out here. Yes, we pretty much have zero hazard removal, but there's something about this team now that's going to do something. It's going to provide the removal from my opponents. And primarily speaking, if they have default users, they need to bring their default users or be forced to run boots every single week they face my team, which is going to be the biggest improvement for my draft, in my personal opinion. First thing we picked up was Haxorus. Now, this was a bad boy I wanted to pick up for such a long time. I think this Pokemon is absurdly broken. It is super strong. Access to things like Scale Shot, which came back towards it in the DLC. First Impression is amazing priority. Dragon Dance sets, Choice Scarf sets, Bandit sets, Mold Breaker, a phenomenal ability, again, going through those Levitate Pokemon, which is so good. And I think that's one thing I really needed. I really need something that was an offensive pressure. Because, yeah, I got Ogerpon, I've got Urshifu, but they kind of do need a little bit of setup to get themselves rolling and going. Whereas Haxorus with that base 147 attack set can just claim a KO almost every time it's in. And again, fairies don't pressure it as much. Excuse me. Fairies don't pressure it as much because of the viability of the coverage it does get for fairies. And again, it can also run that coverage where a fairy thinks, oh, he's going to run the steel move. Boom. But then, boom, I hit you with a poison move. So I think Haxorus has been, I have won a championship with Haxorus before. And it's definitely a Pokemon I have used before. And I am very much excited to have that. Speaking of Pokemon I have used to some great success in the past, we're grabbing my boy, Snorlax. Uh, but Snorlax here is another normal type I love using in draft. It's one of my favorite normals to use in draft as well, just because it's a really good Pokemon. And again, it has some of the best abilities in there. Now, Gluttony, it has its niches, but I think the main reason I liked Snorlax was for these two abilities. Now, if I ever go against a team that has Toxic Spikes or anything like that, and I can't bring Clodsire and I can't remove them, Snorlax can easily run immunity every single week. But again, my opponents have to be very careful about potentially bringing Toxic Spikes against something like Snorlax because Snorlax does get the move Facade. And Facade, a lot of people sleep on this on Snorlax. Snorlax with Facade is broken. This Pokemon quite literally will have no drawback on clicking this. If you have a if you do not have a ghost type that can't reliably come against my team, Snorlax literally can just hold Facade and do something like this. Can just run Cursed, Rest, Facade, and Sleep Talk. Sleep Talk, Like this set alone can beat a team by itself. Now, does Snorlax have pitiful defenses? Yes, he does. But he makes up for it with his bulk and the great offense he does provide to a team. And again, one of the other main things I picked up Snorlax was because of Thick Fat. It helps with my Vikable, it helps with my Jirachi, which I think was really important to me. I think it helps get that fire weakness because you look at my team, I realistically didn't have a fire switching that wasn't named Urshifu. And Urshifu definitely did not want to deal with getting burned potentially. But with having Haxorus, gives me a pseudo fire switching as well. But this is a really good fire switching to my team. And if they want to burn me, I've got Facade with their names on it. I can just smack them all hard with it as well. So I'm super excited to have Snorlax on my team. So I'm very much looking forward to having Snorlax again this season. Now, like I said, there were two fairies I was talking about. One was Mimikyu. This one I have really grown to accustom to love as a support Pokemon. And you look at my team right now. You look at the support Grimmsnarl brings me with just these two moves right here. These two moves alone, plus a third option in this, and even to access to help with stuff like this. Like Grimmsnarl to me has proven to be a phenomenal support Pokemon. And I do think from the Generation 8, a lot of people thought Grimmsnarl was probably good at being like supporter and offensive or just being straight offensive. I personally think Grimmsnarl is at his best as support. And I think, especially in this generation, it's an amazing support mod. Now, can Grimmsnarl still be an offensive menace to society? Yes, it can. It can still be bulk up. It can still run rest, sleep, talk, bulk up, and just stab, move, and go indifference. But I love Grimmsnarl for its amazing support to this team. And I think with having momentum for my team is really good. For having screen support, there's going to be a lot of factors that go into this match, going to future matchups, which I'm really going to like with Grimmsnarl, and I'm very much excited. Another mon that I'm actually very hoping to do well with since I picked it up is Clodsire. Now, Clodsire was originally going to be our opponent for week 2 when we took on Pay's team, but Clodsire got dropped. And then I was looking at Clodsire and I was looking at my team. Yes, it doubles back to the double poison type, but these are two poison types that don't share the exact same weaknesses. One resists psychic, but one resists fighting. Because Overquill can't take on fighting types because of its poison and dark typing. But with having Clodsire is now my new ground type, and also adding a secondary poison type that can check fighting types, which fighting types were a little bit of a problem for my draft. It gave us another really good option, and I think it's a really good defensive piece to this team. I think it's going to pair really well with like the Spadef and Snorlax, which I think is really nice. I think the bulk is really, and again, this gives me a mon that has access to hazards and spikes, stealth rocks, and toxic spikes. So I have now more spikes users. I have more stealth rockers. I have now more spikers. I have a secondary toxic spikes user. This really amped up the hazard setting from our team because if I ever do want to offensively pressure someone with hazards, they're going to have to really be forced to run their rapid spinners or have to use a default on their team. Or if you're like our opponent next week, he could potentially use court change, which I'm going to be very mindful and go into the build for this week. And then the last pick we picked up, I had 8 points left over after all the budget I was spending. And I picked up Houndstone. I picked it up for a couple of reasons. One, I needed a ghost type so we can take on normals fine. Because, yeah, I have Jirachi, but I don't want Jirachi to always constantly be pressured to take on normals, especially certain normals that could be definitely very threatening towards us. So I did pick up Houndstone for Fluffy, because, again, a good defensive ghost type, which is really good. But there's another reason why I picked up this. First, Jeff, yes, Last Respect is bad, but because of the DLC, we got access to Poltergeist. Poltergeist is insanely strong from a Pokemon like this thing. Like, you look at its stat, yeah, 101 attack, you may not think it's the broken thing in the world, but again, this thing can play a good defensive pivot role, and it has good support coverage in things like Will-O-Wisp, things in Yawn, just really good things, good priority in Shadow Sneak as well. I overall think this was a slept-on pick, honestly, and after using it in Owen's League last time, I actually really enjoyed it. But now having access to things like Poltergeist, oh, this Pokemon's so much more fun to use in draft, and I'm actually very excited for excited for Houndstone in this season. So that's gonna be the transactions we made. I actually probably made this video a little longer than I needed to, but again, real quick, no week 3 battle. We will officially go to 3-0 plus 10 going into week 4. We just need to pick up one win, and we pretty much guarantee playoffs. Potential, most likely. But of course, we're going to try to go for every win that we possibly can. Next week, though, we take on a really, really good player and a really good friend of mine. That's right. I've saved it up for the end. Next week, or whenever I upload the next battle, we take on my good friend John Jr. in the Portland Nightshaders. And John, if you guys don't know, has beaten me every time we've played. I have never once beaten John. And I have beaten actually old rivals that have constantly beat me, and I never beat them. I did that earlier with someone else. And John is now the only player in draft history that I have been with that has always beaten me, and I've never gotten a win. I'm coming for the first win. Get the Iowa Jolteons in the comments down below, and we're going to take this dub, man. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start prepping for John. Thank you all for watching. If you stayed through this, put hashtag Jolteons in the comment section below. I love you all. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.